these episodes. Anyway, in case you haven't seen it already, I did do a full reaction for both of these episodes. So if you have not seen that yet, I will provide a description or a link in the description down below, and also an annotation right about here. Yeah, right about there. That looks good. So that'll be up there for a few seconds. Anyway, Mirror Gym and Ocean Gym. My God. For those of you that haven't seen the reaction, I friggin' love these episodes. And if you've seen the reaction, you can pretty much tell what I thought. My God, definitely the two strongest episodes in my opinion thus far. I mean, there's no doubt of that in my mind. There was so much that happened in both of them, and they were just both very strong episodes. I mean, a few others from before kind of, you know, come close to it overall, but my God, as far as so far, these again are the two top in my opinion. But so, you know, my overall feelings on the episodes aside, let's get into my favorite parts of both episodes. Yes. So starting with number 1, Steven's school. Just that little segment, both leading up to it and with Pearl, I just found absolutely hilarious. It, first of all, Steven's not knowing what school is. I find something about that rather strange, which I'll touch on in a little bit, but just him kind of learning, like, some of the, not even details, just like general aspects of school. And then using that information from Connie, he has Pearl gather all of these things so that he can do school. Which, you know, once she finds out that he's wanting to learn, Pearl is just elated because she is, I mean, she's obviously the one that wants to educate Steven the most as far as, I guess, knowledge of gym history goes. Not saying the others don't, but she's the one that's just most clearly, I guess, oriented in that direction. Which actually brings us to the mirror that she gives Steven. And I wrote this down as a favorite part, and I was going to remove it because it's touched upon later in the episode. But the first thing I noticed was that the back of the mirror, it looked like a broken gem. Which again had been touched on not long ago at all. Was it the previous episode actually? I don't remember. But yeah, when Amethyst got her gem cracked, it's like that immediately made me think of, is this like, did this used to be a crystal gem, but it was broken and had to be made into a mirror? So yeah, again, that's the reason why I kept that in the list, just because of that being my first, like, just quick initial question that was touched upon when I saw it. Or not touched upon, but the first thing I thought of when I saw it. Anyway, moving on to my third favorite part of this episode, embarrassing the mayor when he's at the speech giving his little spiel. Now, the mayor has appeared in several episodes in the past, and, I mean, even here, he's not really a bad guy, just clearly full of himself and doesn't really care for others much at all, but, yeah, just that segment of Steven and the mirror making those, well, basically a sound, spit everywhere, gross. But that just cracked me up. And the dialogue, well, what the mayor was saying, and then the way it just perfectly coincided with the fart noises was just amazing. I absolutely loved that segment. I really enjoy it whenever characters of a personality similar to Mayor Dewey's kind of, maybe not so much get what's coming to them, but they at least get embarrassed to some degree. But my next favorite part of this episode was one that legitimately creeped me out. I'm pretty sure during the reaction, I just had a very visceral reaction when this occurred, and it's when, while the mirror is saying things and reacting, you know, using things it's seen before, like from Lars, and Sadie, and Steven, that when it, not even when it laughs, because when it laughs, normally it's not too creepy, but when there was that echoing and that, like, many Stevens in the mirror laughing, it just took on this severely creepy feel to me that, I mean, it's one of those things that sent chills down my spine. And again, this is one of those segments that just thinking about it, talking about it, is giving me chills again, just because it felt so, the laugh went from something so innocent and fun to just like that creepy and foreboding, because there was really no reason for it to go from just like the regular laugh to all of a sudden, ah! Like, it sounded like madness, like the laughter of madness, if that makes sense at all. And then in addition to that, when it starts screaming no, as at the mere mention of the crystal gems, like that right there, that set the tone for what was to follow. And that brings me to my next favorite part of this episode, which just very simply, Pearl's violent OCD. I mean, we've seen examples of how she likes everything very perfect and in its place, but like not even a full second after Amethyst puts that little teddy bear onto the symmetrical thing she's made out of the school supplies, it just gets lanced right through, and it's one of those situations where Pearl just has like this look of madness on her face. I'm just kind of like, good God, I have a feeling this is going to lead to some issues with Pearl down the road. Or, I mean, I could be wrong, but that's the vibe I got from that. But moving on to the real meat of this episode, my next favorite part of this episode was the Jim's reactions to Steven in the mirror. Now, their initial reaction when he says that it was talking to him, or he didn't know it was like a person, it was, looks of surprise, confusion, but then immediately after the mirror actually does talk, just the look of just pure fear on Pearl and Amethyst's face. Garnet, I can't remember if she actually had a look of fear or not, or at least like expressed with her mouth, but there was definitely worry there. And that right there, I mean, the gyms have been freaked out before, but there was just something about that moment. I don't know, maybe, I can't remember if there was music playing at that time or not, or if it was because it was dark, but something about that moment just felt truly bone-chilling to me. But that brings us to my next favorite part of this episode, and it blew me away more than, honestly, anything in the show so far, and anything in both of these episodes, or anything else in both of these episodes. But when Steven slaps Garnet to get away from him, and we see her glasses fall aside, and then she looks at him, and all her three eyes are just staring at him, and oh my God, that moment right there, like watching a cartoon, a kid's cartoon that each episode lasts 11 minutes or slightly over 11 minutes. I felt fear at that moment. Like, the people that drew and animated that part alone, I mean, Garnet doesn't even say anything. Like, you could hear it in her voice. She was getting stern with Steven. Like, she was really trying to get it away from him. But the look she gave him, just the complete non-verbal that was being portrayed in the art and animation of the episode at that moment, was just, again, it was bone-chilling to me. And I honestly don't remember the last time any show has done that. Like, I've watched shows and I felt very emotional. I've watched movies and shows and everything. It's like they really pull with your emotions. But there are very few times where I've been watching something And just a single moment, a single movement of a character just fills you with fear. And that was one of them. This is probably the only one in an actual, like in a cartoon, maybe, at least from what I can remember, but there are very few that I can recall that actually filled me with that kind of fear. Again, without anything being said. And, but okay, moving on from there. Last few parts of this episode, my next favorite part was finding out that the mirror was a crystal gem. It goes back to my second favorite part. And we find out that, yes, in fact, that gem in the back of it was a crystal gem. Or maybe just a gem? I don't know if they go by different names because, well, that brings me to my next favorite part, which is meeting Lapis Lazuli. It was a beautifully designed character. I don't know who voices her. I need to look up more on the different voice actors for this show. But just finding out that she too was a gem, like it just completely confirming that, which I guess I couldn't be too surprised because the episode is called Mirror Gem, so I guess that kind of takes away some of the surprise for me, but I wasn't really thinking about that at the time. But yeah, so that brings us to Lapis Lazuli and the end of the episode. And, I mean, her power over the ocean, or I guess just water in general, was a sight to be seen, undoubtedly. I mean, she just kind of swatted, or well, I guess in this particular episode, she just sort of like held the gems down, or held Garnet down. But I mean, it's clear that she's very powerful. And I'll touch on that more actually in the when I talk about the next episode as well. But yes, so those are my favorite parts of Mirror Gem, and I'll hold off to talk about my annoyances until I'm done with the Ocean Gem favorite parts. So let's get started with that. My first favorite part of Ocean Gem is at the very beginning, and it's when the crystal gems are looking at Steven and explaining to him why he's grounded. And Amethyst's strange belief, or she for some reason thinks that grounding him means they're going to bury him. Which, this almost became a quote of the episode for me, but it didn't. But the Steven's line, "That's not how grounding works." Just those few seconds right there were just comedy gold to me. And I know maybe you could find what Amethyst said there kind of stupid, but for me, especially comedically, it just worked really well, and I loved that part. But that brings me to my next favorite part of the episode, which is that after finding out what all happened, Lapis has taken the water of the ocean, Steven steps up. Like, he packs all of his stuff with admittedly not exactly good weapons. He packed a squirt gun for some reason. But the fact that he steps up and he said, he says, "I'm going to do what I can," or "get thirsty trying," which I thought was an interesting little line to throw in there. But he steps up. He's like, he's ready to take responsibility for this. And then everyone else steps up to go with him. His dad, Connie, Lion, which funnily freaks Steven's dad out. Actually, now that I think about it, had Greg ever seen Lion up to that point? I don't think so. But anyway, and then of course the crystal gems step up and unground him. So yeah, just like that moment right there, I really loved. And up next, my next favorite part of this episode, and it has to do with Mayor Dewey again, but just seeing his misery. Like, he's out where the ocean used to be with a water hose, and he's just sad and crying. And I know it's probably really mean for me to be happy about that, or to find that to be a favorite part, but again, the character just really annoys me. Now, Lars is an annoying character. Possibly not much of a redeemable character, but Dewey, for some reason, just really I guess for lack of a better phrase off the top of my head, grinds my gears. So seeing him in misery was just, I was very happy to see that. Maybe that makes me a bad person, I don't know, but that's just the way I felt for that character. But moving on, my next favorite part of this episode was seeing, however brief, Greg and the Gems' interactions. Just, it's clear that they don't ever spend time together. Like, I don't know how much the Gems actually even know about Greg, other than the fact that he's Steven's dad, and I don't know if they were married, but at least loved Rose Garnet. Rose... I can't think of the right word right now, but anyway, Rose. Yes. It'll come to me later, I'm sure. But when he starts playing the music and Amethyst and Pearl are in the back just like, eh. And then he asks Garnet what she thinks, and she doesn't even say anything. She just like opens the door, and I would say tuck and roll, but she doesn't even tuck. She just rolls. Just like opens the door and that was just a great moment. And then some of the other later interactions as well, but it wasn't. None of them were in close quarters like that was. So it's like that short little bit right there I just loved. Moving on from there, my next favorite part of this episode was the fact that, although I assumed it, and I'm pretty sure others did as well, we get the official reveal, essentially, as far as the show goes, of corrupted gems and how they become these monsters that they've been fighting. I thought that was, personally, I thought that was kind of obvious, considering every time they poof, they turn into a gem of sorts. But, I don't know, maybe, or I guess at the same time I also thought that perhaps these were different kinds of gems, maybe, or just different kinds of whatever they are altogether. So again, although it wasn't really a mystery overall, it was nice to get that official reveal of what they've been fighting and what their nature is and where they came from. Well, to a degree anyway. But yes. Okay, now moving on from there. I really suck at transitions. My next favorite part of this episode definitely has to be the water gems battle. And I didn't really know how else to put that, because that's really what they were. Lapis, from all this water she's gathered, creates like water clones of all the gems, including Steven. And the battle scene overall was just very well done. Very well done. Like, it had some really cool action. It was, the comedy, especially with Amethyst, was hilarious. It was just a great segment. But it also brings to mind, and I guess this could be a theory, but it brings to mind potentially how powerful Lapis is. And all of this is occurring when her gem is broken, so I can only assume not at full power. But she creates these clones that don't really seem to have any weakness up until something into the vibrations from Steven's shield, I guess, causes something to happen with them. I'm not exactly sure. But they don't seem to have any weakness, and as far as strength goes, they stand toe-to-toe with Garnet. Like, there's no... Like, the Garnet clone just punches her, like, yards away, and then when they come up together, it's like they're hitting each other fist to fist, and there's no perceived give to the water gems gauntlets. So it was on even ground with Garnet. And in the end, like, these water gems are winning. Up until Stevens is able to, I'll touch on, up until Steven does what he does, I mean, they were losing. That wasn't really a battle it looked like they could win. So yeah, and I might touch that on that a little bit more coming up, but I want to move on to my next favorite part, which is that not only do we see some action from the gems, but we actually see Greg save the kids. Like, both Connie and, after Lion gets knocked away very easily, Steven and Connie, like, run up to the Steven clone, and they're both getting drowned. Like, there's water bubbles around their heads, and they're drowning. And Greg saves them. And I just thought that was an excellent moment, just because, I mean, anytime stuff kind of like this has happened before and Greg was around, he just wanted nothing to do with it. And even when the battle started, he was just like, no, you don't have to tell me twice, I'm going to the van. And yeah, just the fact that I mean, obviously it's because he loves his son and he wanted to save these kids, but just the fact that he overcame that fear and used the only weapon he really has, which is his van, to run over that Steven clone. I loved that moment. And then, and also to a bit of a lesser degree, I mean, when Connie and Lion saved Steven, I just thought it's a continuing theme of how much I am loving the character of Connie more and more as the show goes on. Because in the beginning, I mean, she was very shy, very restrained. And as much as I thought it was a stupid thing to do, I mean, she runs on head first to help Steven fight this very powerful water clone of him. And yeah, she's becoming more and more courageous. She has wielded, like, that sword that came out of Lion. And so yeah, I love Connie, and the little bits of, however minor, more character progression for both Greg and Connie. I love it when it occurs in this episode. But that brings us to my next favorite part of this episode, and this really kind of covers a bit of a range here time-wise, but when Steven is able to control not only his shield, but his bubbling power, not just bubbling the gems to have it go to Garnet's room, but he is able to, maybe it was involuntary, but when the water Steven throws its one of its bubbles at Steven, he just he lifts his arm like that and the shield forms. So it really does seem that he has control of his powers at that point, which is amazing. I don't know, he may need more training, or maybe he's somehow unlocked the ability to know how to do it. Because even when all the water crashed down on the gems and his dad and Connie and all of them, he saves them with his protective bubble that the last time it was really used to full effect was when we first met Connie. The last time we saw it, and it didn't really last, was when the one robot just kind of pierced it, which was it the third episode with Connie? When they were going to see the movie or whatever it was. But he seemingly has the ability to control his powers now, or at least some of them, because who knows how many powers he actually has, in addition to the healing, obviously. So yeah, just the fact that he showed control over those, just a huge step for Steven. I mean, especially powers-wise, because this shows that he is able to find the control. This shows that he is going to be able to truly step up and stand alongside the crystal gems at some point. He's still young, he's still immature, and he may not have all of his powers under control yet, but he's getting there. And he's only, how old did some people say he was in comments from the previous episode? I guess they're 13, 12 or 13. So yeah, I mean, again, it was a really powerful, great moment for me personally. But moving on from there, my next favorite part of this episode, and it just kind of closes everything up, but it's when Steven heals Lapis. and for a few reasons. One, she grows her water wings, and she regains her original eyes, which I thought that maybe it was just a deal where, you know, she had mirrors for eyes. But no. She regains her true form upon being healed. And it's, I mean, I found her designed to be just absolutely beautiful before, but with the wings, it's like she's like a gem angel, essentially, or at least that's the way it appeared to me. And also having to do with when he healed her was her reaction to when he licked his hand and put his hand on her gem. Her reaction kind of mirrored mine, where I was just kind of like, oh, spit, really? And she's just like, ugh. Even though I guess technically she wasn't looking, so she might not have known what it was, but still, I found the reaction and the fact that it mirrored mine, unintentional pun maybe, I don't know, but I really like that. So anyway, dear God, I've rambled on a long time about my favorite parts of these 2 episodes, haven't I? But there was just a lot to talk about. So let's get into my annoyances. And there are a few, and one I feel is truly legitimate. The other is more, not even a nitpick, it's just something that I guess speaks more about the episode than it does in being an annoyance. But anyway, my first annoyance is that if Steven doesn't know, like, if he doesn't even know what school is, so that means clearly he hasn't gone to school, how did he learn how to write, do math, do really any of just the basic educational things? And I mean, you know, obviously there are people outside in the real world, they get homeschooled. The crystal gems could have taught him these things. But at the same time, other than maybe Pearl, because of their personalities, it seems like they might not really care to explain these things to someone that wasn't fully from their planet, or again, it's like they don't have a lot of concerns for human concerns, I guess you would say. So there's just a little bit of, I guess, kind of stretching the imagination as to how far that goes. And it's not, I mean, it's obviously not a huge issue because it leads us into everything that happens in these 2 episodes, but it is something for me that is just a minor gripe. So again, just a slight annoyance for at least the first episode. And my second annoyance, I wish the battle scene had been longer in Ocean Gym. I mean, it went on for an okay little while, I mean, especially considering it's an 11-minute long episode. But I wish we had gotten to see more of the fight between Garnet and her clone, Amethyst and her clone, and then Pearl and her what became clones. It's like after Amethyst transformed into her wrestling form, which I don't remember the nickname of, I mean, I wanted to see like what happened between that and when we see Amethyst on the ground tied up by her own whip. I want to see how that exchange went, because obviously instead of just trying to throw things at her water self, she had to have gotten in there and, you know, used her fists, clearly. I wanted to see what happened there. And then with Pearl and what became her 2 clones, I wanted to see how some of that battle went. It's like we just got, with Pearl, we barely got to see anything, other than when she slices the first clone in half and it splits into 2. I really wanted to see more of that battle, despite how good it was in general. So yeah, okay, so those are my annoyances with these 2 episodes. In the comments down below, please do leave your own favorite parts, whether you agree with the ones I said or if you have any more, and any annoyances you might have had, because again, those are the only ones for me. Some people may find these episodes to be perfect, and if you feel that way, I couldn't really blame you. But those are just things that stood out to me. But moving on from there, getting into my tracks of the episode, and as always, I'm just kind of naming it off of the particular situation that occurs at the time. But the first one is the music playing when Steven pulls Lapis from the mirror. And I guess that you could even sort of mix in the sound of the water as it's being pulled up from the ocean to where Steven is standing. Like, all of that mixed together, just, however brief, it was absolutely beautiful. I just love that track. It's probably the top of the 2 episodes, actually. And then the music that plays during the battle in Ocean Gym was awesome. I absolutely loved it. Again, I don't know the names for these, so I don't know if the same music has appeared elsewhere, but the music during that segment was just awesome. So yeah, those are my unofficially named tracks of the episodes. But moving on from there, quotes of the episodes, because yes, there were some amazing quotes, and I would feel like I was doing it a disservice to really leave any of these out. So I won't do this much in the future unless any of them like impress me as much as this one did. But the first one is, and this first one is because I relate to it so much. So much. But it's when Pearl gets all the stuff together for Steven's school, and she asks, what now? And Steven says, I don't know. I didn't think to ask anything else. Why do I never ask follow-up questions? Who will teach little Stevie now? I relate to that so much because I'm bad for not remembering to ask follow-up questions, because I will be listening to what the person is saying, trying to take that in. My ADHD makes my head turn this way, and I don't even think to ask a follow-up question. So I know that one may sound silly, but it made sense to me. But anyway, my second favorite quote of this episode, and I feel like it's one that could have some long-standing, I don't know, I think things could stem from it, because it wasn't really touched upon in Ocean Gym. But in Mirror Gym, one of the last lines we get from Lapis is, "Don't trust them, Steven." And, I mean, there's an obvious reason why she would say that. Because, I mean, clearly she doesn't trust them. The only one she even kinda sorta trusts is Steven. But at the same time, it leads me to wonder why. It's clear why Lapis shouldn't or wouldn't trust them, but why shouldn't Steven? Beyond just her own personal, prejudices against them at the time. I mean, it may not be as big of an idea as I think it is, but for some reason I just feel like there could be some repercussions from that line, and whether or not it will make Steven question the crystal gems in the future. But as for my quotes on Ocean Gym, the first one is, and this is just, it's not one that I can relate to, but because I probably also had a similar image that they were trying to portray Greg kind of seeing in his mind, or something like that makes sense, I don't know. But when he says, "Guys, I just had the best idea for an album cover." It's a gorgeously animated scene there, and yeah, that would be I can see how that would inspire someone as far as making a new album cover, or just art in general. So yeah, that's why that line in particular stood out to me. The next one is because, one, it's another one of those examples with Steven stepping up and not taking responsibility in this case, but stepping up to the challenge while still being the Steven we all know and love. And it's when he walks up to the Tower of Water and says, "Lapis, I'm coming up to see you, so please don't drown me." Just something about that line is just so perfect. Again, it's just this great balance of serious Steven and Steven that we all know and love. So it just really, really worked. And then I want to save probably the most important one for last. So I'll move on to the last one I wrote down, which is after Steven heals Lapis, and she thanks him, he says, "No prob, Bob. ... It's Lapis." Just, it's such a perfect interaction because it really does show in some ways how similar Lapis is to the crystal gems we know, in that they don't really get a lot of the nuances of Earthling communication, of just some of the sayings that Earthlings have. So it's just kind of like, it's that clear sign that, yeah, they aren't from this world. They aren't of, like, they don't have human minds. So, yeah, that's, other than it just being funny, that's why that's one of the quotes of the episode. And then the final one, and it could have been, like, the first time I watched the episode, I actually didn't think much of it, but it was the second time watching. And it's a line from Lapis, and she says, "But I never believed in this place." And just that line, you know, I'm gonna use that and actually just move on to the questions, because this is just a question I literally just thought of. Could it be that Lapis was once one of the crystal gems? Like, not the corrupted gems, not the, not one of the bad guys that I guess, Rose was protecting the Earth from, but one of the crystal gems. Like, one of the team. I mean, could it be? I have no idea, but that's a question that comes to mind for me. Because she says, "But I never believed in this place." So that implies that someone else did, or some other people did. Like Rose, like Garnet, like Pearl, like Amethyst. So, yeah, and that even brings me actually to my second question, or the one I actually wrote down, which is, did the crystal gems know it was a gem in the mirror? Because on one hand, Lapis accuses them of knowing she was in there, and they never tried to get her out. Oh, there are just so many. There's so many possibilities there. But yeah, those are my two big questions, and I don't feel confident enough to call them theories. But could Lapis have been one of the older crystal gems when Rose was still around? And did the crystal gems, Amethyst, Garnet, and Pearl, know that she was in there? I don't know. And don't answer the questions, obviously, if they could be spoilers, because I don't want to be spoiled. So why do we ask these questions? I don't know. I honestly don't know. But anyway, moving on from there, my theory for what could come up is very simple, and it is that I believe Lapis, upon getting home, wherever that may be, I assume the crystal gem's home planet, she's going to bring other gems to attack Earth, or at the very least attack the crystal gems. So yeah, I mean, that theory, I guess I'll find out sometime fairly soon, especially given the exchange between Garnet and Pearl at the end, when they say, so Lapis made it off planet, and, you know, what does this mean for us? We'll just have to wait and see. Which, you know, that's the same for me. I'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, just overall, absolutely loved this episode, or these episodes. cannot wait to get into more. For those of you that want more reaction videos, there will be some more in the future, but they are not going to be frequent. This is not a reaction channel. With some exceptions, there will be very few reaction videos overall. Although there might be one coming up. I'm not going to reveal to you what it is yet, because that's coming soon. But yeah, just overall, there will be some, but it's going to be basically the most requested episodes that actually get reactions to them. So, just so you know. But alright everyone, that's all I have to say. Thank God, good Lord, at least according to the timer, I've gone 40 minutes on this thing. So thank you for taking the time to listen to me ramble about these 2 episodes. Thank you for taking the time to, if you do, leave comments, leaving your thoughts, all that. But more than anything, just thank you all for being part of the Kenvians, being part of this channel, and being part of this community that continues to grow all the time. And as I said, I cannot wait to get into more of Steven Universe and get into some other shows as well. So I will see you all next time for House Guest. And considering what happened to Greg's van, I have a pretty good assumption as to who the house guest is. So yeah, until next time, for the next Discovering Steven Universe, I'm PapaKenn, and I'll see you later.